Well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Teaching with Webb's Depth of Knowledge in Mind for High School Equivalency Test Success. Today's webinar is brought to you by Burlington English, and today we have the always exciting Robert Breitbart on with us, who's going to share a few words. Robert?
Well, everybody, thank you for that wonderful introduction to James, Bonnie, and actually, friends, you definitely are in for a treat. We at Burlington English, with our ongoing support of these webinars, are actually extra thrilled today. If you've seen Steve in action before, you know you're in for a real treat, and you're definitely going to walk away with a lot to use right back in the classroom starting on Monday. So again, we at Burlington English are super thrilled, and thanks to COABE, for Sharon, Bonnie, James, the entire team for doing all that you're doing, for everybody who's participating here on a Friday. And I know as someone who spent years and years and years in the adult, particularly the adult ESL classroom, but also the GED classroom, ABE, I know what Steve is going to talk about is so critical. Are we really providing our learners the kind of academic rigor for not just their current study, but really preparing them for their next steps in education? And so we've tried to do that exact same thing with Burlington English. We really worked backwards from a lot of what Steve's going to present. When we came up with our Burlington core, we wanted to make sure that not only did it check off all the boxes as far as the topics that you'd want to cover, as you can see on the screen with your learners, particularly the workforce readiness, the WIOA emphasis, but really also life skills, navigating the community. We wanted to make sure that we provided you everything in one place that includes wherever that one place might be that you're teaching. So either on-site or online, you've got the same screen, projectable lessons. If you're doing blend flex and high flex, we've got that covered for you. And then everything that we can do to bring the learners in so that everything that you're doing with them live, they're doing supplementing that within an asynchronous manner. And also, bottom line though, is with Burlington Core and all of our Burlington products, like I say, you're going to be covering just inherently everything that Steve's talking about, really asking learners to move through activities that really emphasize Webb's depth of knowledge. It's one of my favorite topics. So I know I'm going to sit tight, relax, and enjoy the ride as we watch Steve lend everything that he can give us as far as strategies to bringing the most of this. And we at Burlington English would love to do the same. So please reach out to any one of my wonderful colleagues. Would love to help show how we incorporate Webb's depth of knowledge in all of our materials. And with that, I'll turn it over to the great friends at COABE and from North Carolina, Steve Schmidt. Thank you, everybody.
Robert, thank you so much. Thank you, Burlington English, for sponsoring today's webinar. We appreciate it. We wouldn't be able to put these on if it wasn't for friends like you. So thank you, Robert.
Thanks.
All right, our presenter today is Steve Schmidt. He's an adult education consultant and moderator of the Links Reading and Writing Community of Practice. He has worked in adult basic education for more than 29 years as an instructor, program director, professional developer, and author. From 2010 to 2019, Steve served as a professional developer at Appalachian State University. He has delivered hundreds of workshops on a variety of topics, including at COABE national conferences since 2012. If you want to text us in the chat box where you're calling in from today, that would be great. If you have any questions during his presentation, you can submit those in the Q&A box. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Robert, and thank you so much, James, and appreciate Burlington English for sponsoring the webinar today, and want to give a warm welcome to everyone on a Friday afternoon, or maybe a late Friday morning if you're on the West Coast. And I'm thrilled to see that we have over 100 participants so far in the webinar this afternoon. But welcome to our webinar on teaching with Webb's depth of knowledge in mind for high school equivalency success. And I want to first start off by thanking adult educators in whatever your role is. If you are working on the classroom with students, if you are a support staff, if you are program management, thank you. You make a huge difference in the lives of our students. And students could not do the things that they are going to do, the success that they are going to have without your help. So thank you so much for all that you do on behalf of our students. There is a handout, and James can help you get that if you are having some difficulty. Hopefully that was sent to you as you registered, but James will be happy to help if you're struggling with that. But we will be using the handout for this. I will refer to it extensively. If you don't have it, the world will not end. It would help to have it, but if you don't, you can still enjoy and gain from the presentation. So what are we going to do today? We are going to have two main objectives. And that first is explaining Webb's depth of knowledge. And we're going to really focus on levels 2 and 3 using some similes. And then we're also going to look at two teaching techniques for Webb's success, which would be the think aloud and better questioning techniques. So hope that sounds good and hope that sounds fair on a wonderful Friday afternoon here that we have as we're going. And I know a number of people have introduced themselves, and if you have, great, and thank you for doing that. If you haven't, you still have the opportunity. I'm going to ask not only that you introduce yourself, and if you have already, you don't have to do this again, but we have a multiple choice question, and we're going to have to dig deep for this one. So I would like you to please put the answer in the box, A, B, C, or D. And the question is, how familiar are you with Webb's depth of knowledge? And the choices are letter A, very familiar. Norm Webb and I are BFFs, which is best friends forever. Or choice B, I've heard of it before. It has something to do with thinking skills. Choice C is I've never heard it before. And choice D is Spider-Man uses webs a lot inside his work. So if you would please, in the chat, answer A, B, C, or D. And I see answers coming in from our participants. And thank you, Jessica and Valeria and Teresa and Ethel and Christy and Devon and Yolanda, who have answered various questions here, and that's good to see and kind of helps me as we go on through. But thank you so much for your participation. And Susan and Eric and Maria and Audrey, thank you everyone for the your answers there to this particular question. So let's dive in now to talk a little bit more about Webb's. Now, if you've been in the field for a while, you've probably heard of Webb's depth of knowledge. And this was especially big about, 10 years ago or so as we were transitioning to the new GED. And I had never heard of Webb's before, maybe before 2012 or 2013. What I'm really going to share with you today is Webb's depth of knowledge 2.0. And you'll see what I mean here in just a minute. But a lot of folks were confused by Webb's and may still be confused by Webb's. And I like to use analogies for teaching. So I'm going to throw out many of those today. And first of which would be that Webb's depth of knowledge is like a finish line for learning. So Webb's does not talk about how hard or how easy a question is. It's really the level of cognitive complexity, if we want to get technical, or really if we want to be a little bit more straightforward, how deep does a student have to think about a question in order to answer it? So it's really more what type of thinking do students do in order to run the race of knowledge, so to speak. So how deeply we need students to think. How do we have students express and share their thinking are all things that Webb's depth of knowledge helps us to understand a little bit better. So think about type of thinking, how deep we need to think, cognitive complexity, if you're into those fancy research-based terms. Don't think about hard or easy, because that is really not where we are going with Webb's. So who cares? Why is Webb depth of knowledge important? That's always the million-dollar question. Well, it is important, and it's important for several reasons. First of all, if we're looking at the high school equivalency universe and looking at the GED or looking at the HiSET, the vast majority of questions are at DOK level 2. And when I say DOK, I'm saying depth of knowledge DOK, level 2, level 3. We can see from the chart here on the screen, or if you're on page 2 of the handout, you'll see that roughly high 70s to low to mid 80% of questions in the 4 GED subject areas, and HiSET is very similar. I'm not showing that, but the HiSET depth of knowledge is extremely similar to what we see on the GED. The vast majority of questions are at Webb's depth of knowledge level 2 or 3. But of course, inside adult ed, we are not just concerned about getting students to pass a test. We are concerned about making sure that students succeed in the knowledge economy of today. And the computers and technology can do a lot of low-level number crunching kind of thinking. What we are working on and what we're helping students to develop is making sense of the data. There's so much data out there. How do we make sense of it all? And the type of thinking that Webb's depth of knowledge that we do in these level 2 and level 3 questions really help students be successful in today's knowledge economy. So that's really the bottom line. We want to make sure that our students are successful in the workforce of today and the workforce of tomorrow as well. So just a brief overview. The deeper we go, and I've got an aquarium here. I believe that's the Georgia Aquarium, a place that I was love to visit. The deeper we go, the higher the cognitive complexity, or in other words, the deeper students would need to think about a question. Level 1 questions are essentially recall questions, the kind that we might see on Jeopardy, where we're asked to pick up a small bit of knowledge. Level 2 goes deeper, asks us to apply knowledge. That's the key word there. Level 3 asks us to analyze. And there is a level 4. We're not going to get into it. That's extended thinking. Some test publishers do claim that they have level 4 on their test. I'm very skeptical of that claim, because typically that type of thinking needs to occur over a very long period of time and not 45 minutes or so that one might be doing a test. So the deeper the level, the more thinking is expected from our students. And I'm going to, again, use some analogies. I believe that analogies are the secret sauce of teaching. If we can relate new information to that which our students already know, it makes teaching new concepts so much easier. And so we're going to use some analogies to talk about Webb's depth of knowledge. So Webb's Depth of Knowledge Level 2 is like the Great British Baking Show, or if you're not familiar with that show, maybe something like Hell's Kitchen or another one of these reality TV shows where they bring in people, they bring in chefs, they bring in bakers, and ask them to apply their knowledge of cooking or baking. These folks that we see here on the screen from the Great British Baking Show, this is not their first day in the kitchen. They are already experienced bakers. And what they're asking them to do is apply their knowledge. Paul Hollywood, one of the hosts, has a message for us, and he's saying, I'm asking you to apply your baking skills in different contexts. They're not just going to make some, easy cookie. They are going to do some amazing things. I watched that show a few years ago, and the creations that these folks made were absolutely unbelievable. But the key thing with DOK Level 2, Depth of Knowledge Level 2, is application. How can knowledge be used? And some learning experiences we'd see in the classroom would be things like skills-based performance, expecting students to demonstrate their abilities to use facts, to use concepts, to use procedures that they have already learned. And so some things we might be seeing on a high school equivalency test might be something like a compare and contrast. How is this alike? How's this different? A cause and effect situation, or solving a multi-step problem. Did you say multi-step problem? I sure did. This is an example from the GED, which has been around for a long time. So essentially what we see here is a lot going on. We have a box with text that we're going to have to decode. We have a graph that shows some information as well. And then that asks us a question about type the appropriate session of Congress in the box. The number of women representatives who served in the insert the number here, Congress was twice the number of women representatives who served in the 101st Congress. So we're going to have to read that text. Is there anything inside that box of text that we're going to need to use in order to make sense of what's going on? We're going to have to interpret this graph. So we're going to have to apply our reading knowledge. We're going to have to apply our digital literacy knowledge in order to type that in. We're going to have to apply our information in graphs and charts in order to make sense of this. So this is knowledge application that we see an example of here. So it's not asking us to say who was president in 1824. It's asking us instead to apply information that we see given in several ways. So this is really what our students are up against on a level 2 type question. Okay, so level 2, like the Great British Baking Show, apply is the key word. What are we dealing with level 3? Well, DOK, Depth of Knowledge Level 3, is like the Survivor TV show, which I believe is still on the air. I know it was, I remember watching the first season before my daughter was born. No, she's 21 years old now. So I know that show's been around for a while. But our key word on Survivor is analysis. We're asked to analyze information. So Survivor is really a test of strategy. There are some physical challenges, yes, but contestants on Survivor really are tasked with their ability to form alliances and justify why they're doing that. At the end of most shows, if they still do this like season 1, they have the tribal council and they ask participants why they did certain things, and they had to really justify their responses. So a lot's involved here. There's critical thinking, there's drawing conclusions, they're making inferences, and they're justifying thinking. These are all things that we see on a level 3 type question. Again, key word with level 3 is analyze, analysis. The great example for this on high school equivalency tests, whether you're dealing with HiSET or dealing with GED, is the extended response, is what that's called on the GED. We're looking at 2 pieces of information, and we're having to analyze the arguments presented in each one. And we're going to have to develop an argument as to which one is better supported and why. HiSET questions a little bit different, but mostly the same, where we're using these higher level thinking skills. We're analyzing, we're looking at both of these paired text to try to come up with, understand the arguments and see which one is presented better. So other things we might be doing, creating solutions, explaining reasoning, connecting ideas together. and solving multi-step problems using information from several sources. That's essentially what we're doing here with DOK level 3. So we've had a few minutes here about DOK level 2, DOK level 3. Let's take a breather for a minute. And what I would like for you to do, please, is just put something, a brief sentence inside the chat about what do you remember about what we've just talked about with level 2, level 3. What are the key words? What analogies did we make? Something that you're going to take away from level 2 or level 3. Grace, good to see someone I remember from North Carolina who likes the Great British Baking Show analogy, and we got some fans of the Great British Baking Show. So let's see, pop culture analogies. Thank you, Marlena. I wish I could take credit for that, but it's all some great work done by Eric Francis. And he's really taken Webb's depth of knowledge to the next level. Webb's 2.0 is what I would say. So let's see. Carol says level 2 is apply and level 3 is analyze. Good. She remembered the key words, as did Lawanda. And Darla's remembering level 3. Rhonda's talking about cause and effect, which is what we might see in level 2, level 3 questions. Thank you, Diane and Alexandria and Tamara. And let's see, Therese is talking about application. Jessica, apply and analyze. Good. And Michelle's remembering the analogies with the baking show and Survivor. Good, good. So good. Folks are, and especially on a Friday afternoon, I am impressed at our level of remembering what we've talked about. Therese is mentioning the multi-step there. Thank you, Jackie and Brenda and Janet. We got some great participation here. Thank you. And we'll be having some others as we go on through. All right. And Gerardo, even remember level 1, which we only said one sentence about. So extra credit for you, sir. All right. Well, thank you for those responses. Appreciate that. So the main star of our show is really talking about some strategies that we can use to help students who are dealing with these level 2 and level 3 questions. We're going to talk about 2 strategies, the think aloud and better questioning. So let's get started on those. Let's talk about the think aloud. In adult ed, I don't believe that we do think aloud nearly as much as they do in K-12. And I think we can gain a lot from think alouds. And I have been encouraging instructors to use think alouds for a number of years. What is a think aloud? Well, a think aloud is really what we see this gentleman doing here in the picture. It is eavesdropping on someone's thinking. You can see that this gentleman has a glass to his ear. The glass is on the wall. He's trying to hear what's going on next door. And when we do a think aloud, we are asking students to eavesdrop on our thinking, what we're thinking, how we're processing, the steps that we go through as we read, as we solve problems, as we deal with multiple text items or multiple text and charts and graphs. So it really helps students to understand and provides a model for thinking. I first became aware of the power of the think aloud long before I knew what a think aloud was. I mentioned my daughter a few minutes ago, and I remember when she was little, I would say things to her that my parents said to me. And I'm thinking, where on earth did that come from? But now I know I was seeing my parents model these different things that we would say, and I adopted those in my own thinking with my own kids. So I know for a fact that the think aloud is powerful as I became my parents from seeing them, their thought processes there. But essentially, think aloud is eavesdropping on someone's thinking. This is based on some amazing research with mirror neurons inside of our brains. And I'm going to say this as clearly as I can. Think aloud works because of mirror neurons. With a mirror neurons, when we see something done by others, the neurons in our brains fire as if we were doing the same actions ourselves. And I'm going to say it again. With mirror neurons, when we see an action done by others, our neurons are firing as if we are doing the same action ourselves. There's some amazing research. I could talk the rest of the time on this if we had the time to do so. I know with, they did one study about learning to dance. How does one learn to dance? And they tried different things and put feet on the floor, and you put your feet where the feet is. But they found that watching experienced and skilled dancers dance was the best way to teach someone to dance. And we could do the same thing with our students. We can show them and model our thinking to them so that they will learn the thought processes necessary for DOK level 2 and level 3 thinking. Now, a few years ago, I modeled in a workshop with instructors about how to do a think aloud. And then I divided the room into pairs and had each one play a teacher and a student and had them do a think aloud on something. And I came away from the demonstration thinking that I was God's gift to professional development and didn't everything go great. And the very first thing that I saw one of the instructors do was ask a student a question. And I thought, oh, I have failed miserably in my quest to demonstrate the think aloud. So what I want to do is show the difference between what we're so used to doing, which is direct instruction, and how a think aloud differs from that. We're familiar, if we've been in the field for a while, with direct instruction. The I do, instructor demonstrates, practice as a group, and then students do independent practice on their own. But we're not doing that in a think aloud. In a think aloud, we are modeling our thinking for students. So instead of asking students questions, we might be asking ourselves questions and answering those questions. And what do we ask the students to do? Well, they're tasked with watching the instructor closely to see how they're thinking. And so I would encourage you, when you do a think aloud, to not try to do one over an extended period of time because of that reasons. But how that's different in direct instruction is students are working with the instructor in the we do section, and then they're working independently in the you do section. So questions that are asked in a think aloud are the instructor asking it of themselves and answering it of themselves, versus direct instruction, where an instructor may ask the questions to the student and expect the student to answer. So how does a think aloud work? I'm going to model one in a few minutes, but page 5 of the handout does provide some information about what to say and what to do during a think aloud. And think alouds have legs, or in other words, they can be used in so many ways. We could certainly use them for reading. Show students how a good reader, which you are, show students how a good reader makes sense of what they're reading. I was in a webinar the other week, and Meredith Lieben was talking about teach reading holistically, and what better way of teaching reading holistically, in other words, looking at the passage as a whole, than doing a think aloud about it. And so we could ask questions or offer comments such as, oh, this title made me think about, reading this might help me think more about, oh, this isn't making sense, so I can do this particular strategy to help me make sense of this more. As I read, I can picture, this, that, and the other. We can do this with a math problem and model the type of thinking that we would do as we tackle a math problem, and demonstrate some different strategies as we go on through. If you want to see a so-so example of the think aloud, stay tuned, and I'm going to do one in a minute. If you want to see a really wonderful example of the think aloud, there's a wonderful video on YouTube called Comprehension Monitoring Think Aloud, which is done by Meg Schofield, who's an outstanding instructor, or maybe was an outstanding instructor in California. And she does a beautiful job of demonstrating a think aloud in reading to a couple of her students. So there's some examples of some things that we can say as we do a think aloud. I am going to model a think aloud. So let me see if I can get my pointer working to the pen shape. And so I'm going to do the think aloud as if you were my students here. What I am going to talk about first, though, is, again, what are some of the backgrounds to the think aloud, and then I'm going to dive into it. So again, as I'm doing this, I am showing students what I'm thinking as I tackle making sense of this infographic. So I'm not going to be asking questions to the students. I might be asking questions to myself. I am going to talk and describe ways that I make meaning of this. So that's what I am going to be doing here. So let me grab a quick sip. Okay, we are ready to go now. So what I'm going to be doing here is modeling a think aloud, making my invisible thought process visible to students. So here we go. All right, guys. So I'm going to be doing a think aloud, and a think aloud is just going to show you what's going through my head as I think. The goal is that we can learn to think, and we can learn how to tackle even these difficult and challenging infographics that we might see on the high school equivalency test, or we might see in the work world. And so as I'm tackling any type of an infographic, something that provides information in visual form, I always want to look first to see what the title is. And I see a title. It says, "What happens online in 60 seconds, managing content shock in 2020." So, okay, what does this tell me? Well, this seems to be saying, what are people doing online? And let's see, 60 seconds. I guess that's a minute. So I guess in a minute of time online, this particular graphic is going to show me what's happening during that time. And I could see this is fairly recent information. This is things that were happening as of the year 2020. So I'm looking at my title first, which is going to talk to me and tell me what people are doing online every minute of time. And the second thing I want to do is look for, is there any type of a legend? And a legend isn't the story about a giant. The legend is just something that's going to help me make sense of what I see. And typically legends are in the corners somewhere. A lot of times they're in the lower left, like on a map. This particular legend is in the upper right, and I'm going to go ahead and circle that. I can see that I see a smaller version of this bigger. It looks kind of like a dartboard, a smaller version of this larger dartboard. And I can see the 60 there. I can see the 60 there. And I see 3 rings in the big one. I see 3 rings in the small one. Ah, okay. So this is telling me that the inside ring represents what's happened in 2017. I can see the next ring in the middle represents what happened online in 1 minute in 2018. And I could see the outer ring represents what happened in 1 minute online in 2019. So the third thing that I want to do, anytime I'm dealing with a graph, chart, whatever, these all tell a story. It's just a question of figuring out what story they're telling me. And so we've got 3 years. I bet the story is, are we seeing certain things happening more, or are we see certain things happening less? And it appears to me that I could go from the inside ring to the outside ring, and that would tell me the story. So I'm guessing if I see numbers going up, that would mean that particular thing is done more. And I would guess if I see numbers going down, that would be this particular thing is happening less. That would seem to make sense. So let's figure out what stories are being told here. And it looks like we've got, excuse me, multiple stories. So let's start with our old friend, the email. So in 2017, with these numbers I can see are in billion, they tell me. Not 225 emails were sent, but 225 billion. And I think a significant number ended up in my inbox. So what's going on? Are the numbers going up or going down? 225, 281, 294. These numbers are going up. So it seems that email, and I'm going to put a little notation here, the number of emails sent is increasing. And we use emails to communicate privately on the job. And so I guess that doesn't come as a huge surprise that the number of emails are increasing. And that's my attempt at an upward arrow there. It looks kind of like a hatchet or something. I don't know. Let's see, Facebook. But it's not just Facebook. It's saying Facebook brand post. What do I know about brand post? Let's see. Well, I know people use Facebook in order to tell about what's going on in their lives. But I also know that companies use Facebook to publicize what's going on. So brands, I guess, would be companies who are advertising what they're doing on Facebook. And it looks to me like we're seeing numbers going down. So it appears that companies are not using Facebook as much for advertising. That makes me wonder why. Have they found Facebook to be ineffective? Are they using something else? Maybe they've gone to TikTok or Twitter or Snapchat or something else. That would be a guess. I don't know that that's really true. Let's see the Google search. We can see 3.8, 4.2, 4.4. Google knows. Google knows the answer. So it looks like those numbers of searches are going up. Let's see Instagram. What's going on with it? We see from 2017 to 18 an increase, but then a drop in 19. So Instagram, I guess, kind of went up and then went down. And it looks like it went down pretty significantly. And I don't know the reason for that. Maybe people are using some other visual thing on the web to get information and to share what's going on in their lives. Twitter. So again, from here going out, are numbers going up or are numbers going down? And I see numbers are steadily increasing. So it looks like people are tweeting more. So Twitter's going up. WordPress. Let's see, what do I know about it? First of all, what's the story? Well, it appears numbers went up, but then numbers went down. Do I know anything about WordPress? What I do know is that I know a lot of bloggers use WordPress to talk about what's going on in their blogosphere. So it would appear to me that bloggers went up from 2017 to 18, but then declined. And that makes me think, I wonder if they're going to some other way of communicating with their followers. Maybe they've switched over to YouTube and doing video logs. Maybe they've shifted over to Snapchat or something else. I don't know. Let's see, WhatsApp. WhatsApp has been a wonderful help during the pandemic. And I know a lot of teachers have used this to teach and provide content to their students. And WhatsApp is also used as a messaging app. And let's see what's going on with it. We're going up and we're going up. So it looks like from 2017 to 19, this has increased popularity. And I wouldn't surprise me if we saw a similar increase recently. And let's see, last but not least, we've got YouTube. What's going on with it? So reading from the inside out, and it looks like we've gone from 400 to 450. And that's just mind-blowing. 500 hours of video content is uploaded every second. That just blows my mind. So, okay, so I'm stopping here, the modeling, the think aloud. And let's see if I could get my pointer going back to and arrow. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you is please in the chat, brief sentence, brief phrase, couple words. What did I do in the think aloud to make my thinking visible? How did I take the invisible stuff that is going on inside my head and make that visible to students? So just a brief phrase, couple words inside the chat. What did I do to make my thinking visible inside the think aloud? And thank you in advance for your help. Let's see, Susan says descriptive explanations. Carol said I annotated my spoken words. Thank you. Marlena says you asked questions about trends and compared different websites or apps. Good. Let's see, Diane, who's got the power, said what directed folks where to look when. And Grace says you verbalize the questions you ask yourself. All right, Grace. Let's see, Jackie said you talked it out and drew on the chart. Talked it out. That's a good way to describe it, Jackie. I like that. Bob said use of arrows to show the trends. Suzanne mentioned that. Describe loudly. You may have to turn your volume down, Alexandria. Sorry about that. Let's see. Caroline says I verbalized my thought process, says Tamara did. Let's see, Tracy mentioned about questioning that I asked myself, as Yolanda did. Thank you. Marcia said, talked about what I was seeing. Good. Misha, that's a cool name. Explained my thinking and how to use questions to direct your thinking. Described your thoughts to yourself. Thank you, Cheryl. Was really hoping again that students are going to see that and pick up on that. Thank you. Spoke your thoughts and questions. Good. Thank you, Cindy. You thought through the process of how to understand the graphic. Thank you, Janet. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Alexandria, for that clarification. Bold and clear. Okay, that's good. That's good. Let's see. David mentioned about combining verbal with visual. That's great. Answered your own questions and gave some what if answers. Yeah, because that's, I'm always wondering and questioning, and that's how we can develop that power inside students as well. But thank you to everyone who put a great comment inside the chat. Appreciate that. So what I would wager, what I would guess, what I would bet is that no one on our webinar today was born knowing how to think, critically. We all learned this. And sometimes we think, oh, these questions are so hard. I don't know if my students can get this, but they can. And this is one way where we can show them the thought process. And I would encourage, as we do think alouds, again, to keep them short. We all know the research about attention spans, which typically aren't great. And so I would not encourage us to do a 30-minute think aloud. I would try to keep them out of fairly short, like 5-10 minutes and along those lines, so we don't lose our students completely. And then we could do a debrief with them, ask them, what did you pick up through this? And have them share thoughts about what they noticed and about what they saw. So those are good things. But I love the think aloud technique, and it can definitely help because we all learned how to think by watching someone else as well. But thanks again to all who participated inside the chat. So we've looked at one key, which was to think aloud. Key number 2 is better questioning. And questioning is something that we use all the time as we teach, but I'm going to try to give some pointers on how we can do a better job of this. I think that when we plan lessons, a lot of times we don't often plan the types of questions we give. And I think we could do a better job of planning some questions that we might ask as we're teaching. So let's talk a little bit about wait time first. And I never assume that folks know what I'm talking about. And I know we always have new people in the field. So what are we talking about with wait time? Is that the time I have to wait before the bus comes? Well, in teaching, what we're talking about with wait time is how long an instructor is going to pause after they ask a question. And I'll tell you, I've been teaching for over 30 years. And for me, this is one of the hardest things that I'm called on to do as a teacher, because sometimes it's just hard when there's silence there. But I love this quote, and I don't know who said it, and I don't remember where I found it, but it said, "Let's wait for genius, because genius happens in the silence." And so wait time is the pause after we ask a question and we ask for a student response. So when we're dealing with DOK level 2 and level 3 questions, we need more wait time. A level 1 question, who, what, when, where, we can get those fairly instantly. And a lot of times that's what's done in traditional school a lot of times. These level 2 and level 3 questions need more time. So there's a way that we can build in more time there. Before I get into this, though, I want to talk a little bit about this. You have students in your class that are similar to me. And what I mean by that is I am not someone who instantly has the answer to a question, and I never have been. Through my work career, I always disliked going to meetings where they asked folks on the spot to brainstorm solutions, because I'm a muller. In other words, I need to mull things over and think things over. And if you ask me in a 30-minute or an hour meeting to come up with a brilliant solution, I'm sorry, but you're going to be disappointed because I need more time to think. And I think we have a lot of students similar to that who are deep thinkers and can think successfully. They just need a little bit more time to get to the finish line. Barbara Oakley, in her class, Learning How to Learn, which I had the privilege of going through a couple of years ago, talks about hiker brains and race car brains. And race car brains are those ones that get the answers instantly. And I believe that race car brains are rewarded in school so often. But I know that I am, and I know that many students in adult ed are hiker brains, or in other words, they're going to get there, but they just need a little time to go and think about things and examine the scenery, so to speak. But they're going to eventually come up with the answer. And they may come up with a far more in-depth answer than the race car brain who got it like that. And so there are many students with the hiker brain, in other words, those students who need a lot of time to think and mull over inside our classrooms. So what do we see on the screen, or what do you see on page 6 of the handout? Well, what we see is a way that we can build in wait time for different DOK level questions. And this is some wonderful work that Dr. John Walkup has done fairly recently, and had the privilege of talking with him a couple of years ago when I developed this workshop. So this table suggests some ways that we can handle wait time with different DOK level questions. DOK level 1, again, these recall things, we don't need long for those. We can do those in 10 seconds. Maybe a DOK level 2 question, we can do a think, pair, share. In other words, where we say, I'm not going to take any responses right now. I want to give you this certain amount of time to think. And once you've thought, tell your partner the answer, and then we could call on folks to share with the whole group. But a minute is the suggestion for a DOK level 2, because there's so much more going on. It takes more time to apply than just shout out an answer. DOK level 3, we could go even longer, and perhaps we could do some groups where we're having students in groups of 4 or more, and maybe give them 10 minutes to come up with an answer, because these DOK 3 level questions are asking us to do analysis and they need more time. The challenges on the high school equivalency test, unfortunately, they don't say, oh, this is a DOK level 2 question, so you get more time. But again, we have to work and help students to develop those thinking skills so they're ready for success. DOK level 4, which again, I don't really feel is on any high school equivalency test, but you may be doing thinking like this if you're doing some project-based learning or problem-based learning, which are both 2 outstanding techniques. These are going to take a lot longer. We may be doing this project or examining this problem over multiple class periods. And doing these challenging questions are a great way to enhance DOK level 3 thinking along with the level 4 thinking. So some great suggestions about how to handle the wait time there. Now, what I'm hoping, we've got a panel of experts here. We've got over 120 wonderful adult ed professionals across the country here. So please, in the chat, how do you do wait time when you ask questions? And I'll model what I'm talking about. One thing that I've done with wait time is I will hold both my hands behind my back and I will pull fingers out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not saying this out loud, but I'm doing this behind my back until I reach a count of 10. So that's one way that I do wait time with asking questions. And I tell students, I'm not looking for a shouted out answer here. Let's think a minute, and then we'll go from there. Let's see, Thomas Phelps mentioned how many teachers need to develop enough patience to wait more than a minute or so. Too many of us get tired of waiting to answer the questions. Yeah, Thomas, that's the challenge, and I'm with you on that. I am with you on that. That's a great, great response. Darla tells him the amount of time that she's going to wait. Beautiful, Darla. Love that. Rebecca says the pregnant pause, and I won't expand on that. Let's see. Karen says, I struggle with wait time. I'm with you, Karen. Patricia said it's based on at least a minute. Good, Patricia. Yay, yay. Thomas hums the Jeopardy theme. Good, I love it. And let's see, Brenda says 15 seconds max. So maybe looking at this chart, Brenda, we can think about some more time, especially around those level 3 questions. Let's see, Ornisha asks the questions, but turns to the whiteboard and starts writing, and tell them I have their answers once I stop writing. I wonder what it is that she's writing. That would be interesting to know. Pace and scan. Give them the time. Good, Yolanda. Let's see, I often say, please don't answer yet. Good, thank you, Janet. Grace says, I've used an online timer. Oh, Grace, I always remember you were very high tech. Good deal. Let's see, there's a wait time app. I'm sure there is. Gosh, there's an app for everything. Let's see, Ethel takes 1 minute to answer a question to be successful. Good, thank you, Ethel, that's great. Audrey prefaces it with the word, take your time and think before you put the answer in the chat. Good. I also repeat the question. Yeah, thank you, Darla. That's a great technique. That's awesome. Marcia says, until someone's waiting for an answer. That's good. Oh, Ornisha, thank you. She said she writes things they need to remember, like vocabulary, to help them. Good. Let's see. Paula holds her hand up and shows 4 fingers. And then one at a time, I drop them down and students can answer only after all my fingers disappear. That's a great technique. You just have to be careful about which finger that you leave for last. But Paula, I'm sure you do that well. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, everyone who's done this, because it is hard. This is such a challenge because we just don't like that dead time there. And Suzanne is mentioning the importance of repeating or rephrasing the question. Very, very true. Very, very true. So, but wait, there's more. What else can we do to ask better questions? This is another thing that I borrowed from Dr. John Walkup, the GRAPPLE strategy. And GRAPPLE is an acronym. And the acronym GRAAPLE, G stands for Group Students Strategically, using the DOK chart that we just looked at. In the handout, it says page 9, but it's you always have to make at least one good mistake in every handout. It really should be page 6. So if you have at least a paper copy you're able to edit, you should write page 6. But in other words, it's the wait time chart that we just saw a minute ago is what's being referred to. R is remind students of the questioning rules. And here's a phrase that Dr. Walkup had suggested. I'm going to ask you a question about what we just learned, but remember, don't shout out the answer. Also, I won't be calling on raised hands. And this could be something we do initially. Over time, students will get used to that, and we wouldn't necessarily need to repeat that in such great detail. So G, group. R, remind. A, ask the questions multiple times. Suzanne and others mentioned that a number of times, that we need to ask it. And that is so important, because again, with a student like me, who's that hiker brain, they may be hiking somewhere else, and they may not have heard the question the first time or the second time or the third time. So we may want to ask that question several different times. And then the P stands for that pregnant pause, to create adequate wait time, whether that's 10 seconds or a minute or longer. P stands for pick a student strategically. And always, if you do that, give students the option to opt out. Make that your classroom's a relaxed atmosphere, so students can pass if they don't want to do so. Or you could ask for volunteers. But with the V, it just doesn't make a meaningful word. Anyways, L is listen carefully to the student's answer. And that is so hard to do. Something I've been teaching for 30 years and struggle with that, because I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next and what the next question is, and how much time do we have left and all those things. But listening is so important and so hard to do. What is the student trying to tell us? And then finally, E is effectively react to the answers. I'll just mention one example. A lot of times, if we say either you're right or you're wrong to a response, both of those have the same effect. And both of those have the same effect on our students' mind by asking that brain to shut down, because the brain, when someone hears the answer's right, they're stopped thinking about it. It's just, oh, that person answered, so why should I think any more about it? Or if they're wrong, oh, I feel bad because I've given the wrong response. There's better responses to right or wrong. You may want to call on someone else and say, thank you, that's a great answer. What do you think, Anna? What do you think, Bob? What do you think, Tanisha? And get some different perspectives. That keeps the student thinking. Or let students know in advance, I'm not just going to take one answer to this question. And a lot of times, especially level 3 questions, and certainly level 4 questions, there can be more than one right answer. And especially, and if you're using evidence to back up your claim, there may be several good answers, like the GED and the HiSET extended response, the essay question. There are multiple right answers. You can pick either of the two of the paired text as being the one that provides the most effective argument. There is not one right answer as long as you back that up. So Grapple, I love acronyms. Grapple is a neat one to use to ask better questions and bake in that wait time, so to speak. And it's good reminders about asking that question several times, about the pregnant pause, and then really kind of asking students to not chime in with a quick answer without thinking. So Love grapple, a great technique there. Okay, so, excuse me. DOK question stems, which you'll find half of on page 7 and the other half on page 8. These have been around for a while. I do remember these back in 2012 and 2013. These are great tools. And especially, we would want to try to work to get our students asking questions, not just us being the ones to ask them all the time. And DOK question stems provide the starter, so to speak, to allow our students to effectively do this. So we have one for DOK 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so these are good ways to get students to think and to ask their own questions about what they're dealing with. So another good technique, another good resource to use as we work with and as we teach our students, the old question stem. This can help with lesson prep and also help get students used to asking questions at these higher thought levels. And I want to close this particular section with another quote from Joseph Albers, who says, good teaching is more than a giving of right answers than a giving. Okay. Is it Friday afternoon? Yes, it must be. I'm sorry, Mr. Albers, I have mutilated your quote. Let me try one more time. Good teaching is more a giving of right questions than a giving of right answers. And I love that. I think that is so, so true. And too often we just ask a level 1 question. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with level 1 questions, those who, what, when, where, because those help to build kind of a base. They build the base of the ladder, and then we can climb up the rungs with using level 2, level 3 questions. We got to start from somewhere. So, level 1 questions are not bad or evil. They are a way to set the stage, so to speak. Okay, we have one more multiple choice questions, and it asks, higher level DOK questions need more wait time because, and your possible selections are, they just do, so choice A. Choice B is they require more thought since they're more cognitively complex. C, they involve getting behind a really slow person at the supermarket checkout line. Or D, the statement's not true, that higher level questions need less wait time. And the question before, it didn't matter what the answer was. I hope that we're seeing a trend here, and we're seeing both uppercase and lowercase, and the responses from Susan and Dorothy and Janet and Karen and Tamara and Bev and Priscilla. I like what I'm seeing. Thank you, Paula and Tiffany and Rebecca and Audrey. Yay. All right. So we're seeing that they are more cognitive complex, or in other words, they require more think time. So thank you for everyone who's answered that question. So questions, comments, concerns. I will take those, and let's see, we might have had a few more in the Q&A. And if you would, one last thing I'll ask you to do is put a takeaway, something you're going to take back that you'll be using in your classroom come Monday. Let's see, I had a couple of questions about how do you use this with ESL? That's a great question, Therese. I would, we do questioning in the ESL classroom, so I think that is a like technique. I would just, consider the level of your class as you do the think aloud, and be careful of the words that you use, and be careful of what you're doing. And that's going to vary widely, depend if you've got a beginner class or a more advanced. Great question, Therese. Let's see, Suzanne says, can you give the source of the chart on social media online time spent? Well, Suzanne, I could if I remember. Oh gosh, I put this handout together 2 years ago, and you're right, I should have given a source for that, but I don't remember. I found it, I searched for it in the summer of 2020, but I don't remember what it was. I'm sorry, Suzanne. I wish I could give you a better answer to that. So let's see, thank you for everyone who's putting down some good stuff in the chat, and several good takeaways. And Andrew's going to use the think aloud more, and Michelle's going to purposely advance her questioning with increased wait time. That was beautiful, Michelle. If I was your boss, I'd give you a raise for saying that. Let's see, Audrey's going to do more think alouds and more wait time. Janet's going to do this with teaching math. Good. Mods, thank you for your kind comment. Jaden has a better understanding of DOK. I love the quote. And let's see, Dave's going to do more think aloud. Thomas, thank you. And Donna, you like me really needs to work on wait time. I'm with you. Thank you, Suzanne and Caroline and Maria and Bob. Thank you. So I appreciate, again, gosh, this is dedication to be here on a Friday afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your kind attention. Appreciate that. Looks like there's a poll coming up that you can go ahead and answer, and I will turn it back to Robert or James. And again, thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Steve, excellent presentation. Lots of, that was one of the better engagement webinars I think I've hosted. So that was fantastic. Robert, you want to say a couple words before we close it out?
Just ready to grapple. That's great. Steve, I don't know if I've attended a session with more great, I know exactly what to do my next class. That was fantastic. And just super quick for the folks who asked, how can we apply this to ESL? I'll go to your great quote you had there about asking the right questions more than the right answers. And so we at Burlington English, we provide you with the tools in our products, particularly Burlington Core, so you can ask those right questions, right? A lot of the times the instructional resource materials you're using could help you prompt those right questions. And so Steve, I think you'd be very proud of the work we've done. So as would Mr. Webb. So thank you all. Yes. Stay dry, everybody, too, from a very rainy Florida.
All right. Thanks, Robert. Thanks again to Burlington English for sponsoring today's webinar. And thank you, Steve. As a reminder, I know some people asked about the handouts. They will definitely be attached to the webinar replay when that's posted to coabe.org. So those will be available there. If you haven't already, if you could just fill out that poll real quick, let us know what you thought about today's webinar. And with that, I hope everybody has a great weekend, great rest of the day. All right. Thank you very much.
Great job, Steve.
Everybody.
Thanks, Coabe.
Thank you.